Imagine for a second just putting a CEO into a functional MRI, and you show them their company's stock price, like, suddenly collapsing.
Right. A total high-stakes scenario.
Exactly. But here's the crazy part. Imagine being able to predict down to the exact week when their brain will literally just lose the capacity to make a rational decision.
It sounds like science fiction, honestly.
It really does. But I mean, it's not anymore. Because usually, when someone in a high-pressure role gets an executive physical, you expect this very standard checklist.
Oh, yeah. They put you on a treadmill for a few minutes.
Right. They slap a blood pressure cuff on your arm, draw some blood to check your cholesterol, and just send you on your way.
Which is, it's just an incredibly binary way to look at human performance.
Yeah, totally.
Because you're either in the normal reference range or you're not. It tells you almost nothing about how that person actually functions under, crushing sustained pressure.
It's basically like taking your car to the mechanic and having them just check if the paint is shiny and if the speedometer needle moves.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Sure, it looks fine sitting there on the lot.
But what we are looking at today goes so much deeper under the hood. So welcome to the deep dive. Our mission today is to explore this really advanced clinical framework. It was presented by Dr. Christophe Delong and connective formation.
And it completely redefines the neurodecisional assessment of high-level executives.
It's so fascinating. We're looking at how modern science actually measures the literal biological cost of leadership. So to use that car analogy again, we aren't just checking the paint here. We're plugging directly into the car's internal diagnostic computer to measure the microscopic wear and tear on the engine while it's actively redlining.
Well, and to really understand how they do this, we have to completely throw out our traditional definition of health.
Okay, sort out how.
So in the past, medicine relied really heavily on this concept called homeostasis.
Right, just keeping things balanced.
Exactly. Homeostasis is essentially a static balance. It's your body's baseline reference point when you are perfectly relaxed, perfectly safe.
But no executive is perfectly relaxed.
Right. If you're a leader constantly navigating crises, or honestly just anyone trying to manage a really high-stakes life, you do not live in homeostasis. You live in what we call allostasis.
Allostasis. Okay, let's break that down for everyone, because I know that's a massive distinction in this framework. What is the actual physical difference between the two?
Think of it like this. Homeostasis is maintaining a stable, 72-degree temperature in a really well-insulated room.
Sounds nice.
It is. But allostasis is the dynamic, aggressive adaptation your heating and cooling systems have to perform when the windows are thrown wide open during a literal blizzard.
Oh, wow. Okay, so the room might still read 72 degrees on the thermostat.
But the furnace is screaming to keep it there.
Right.
It is stability achieved through constant aggressive adaptation. And that really brings us to the core metric of this entire clinical approach, which is allostatic load.
The allostatic load,
Right.
which is the cumulative biological cost, right? The physical damage of all that chronic adaptation.
Precisely. So the goal of this modern assessment isn't just to see if you are ostensibly healthy today. The goal is to map your predictive trajectory toward decisional exhaustion.
That is so wild. So the doctors aren't asking, are you sick? They're literally asking, when exactly are you going to break?
Yeah, when does the furnace burn out?
Wow. And to understand that wear and tear, we really first need to look at the body's primary stress management engine.
Because when you are pushing your system, the central command center for your stress response is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis.
Or the HHS axis for short.
Right. And this is the system that pumps out cortisol.
And from what I understand in the Delong and connective framework, measuring this requires way more than just a single blood draw at your annual checkup.
Oh, absolutely. Your cortisol levels are supposed to fluctuate. They aren't static. So to get a real picture of your allostatic load, clinicians map your salivary cortisol circadian profile throughout the entire day.
So they're taking samples multiple times.
Yeah, they take samples when you wake up at noon, at 5 p.m., and then right before bed at 10 p.m.
And the patterns this reveals are just fascinating. Like, for instance, you're supposed to get a massive spike of cortisol right when you wake up in the morning, right?
Yes, it's what wakes you up and gets you going.
But if you're missing that morning spike, the framework says that means the dysfunction in your HHS axis is just beginning. Like you're starting to struggle to jumpstart the engine.
Exactly. But then, what if you have really high evening cortisol?
Right, when you're supposed to be winding down.
That indicates hyperactivation of your sympathetic nervous system. Basically, it's an absolute physiological inability to disconnect.
So you might be sitting on your couch trying to watch TV or whatever,
But biologically, your body genuinely thinks you are still in the boardroom fighting for your life.
That sounds exhausting. And what if you see a constant high plateau across all four of those daily measurements?
That means your system is just flooded. You are carrying a massive, chronic, allostatic load. But, cortisol is only half the story here.
Right, because clinicians look really closely at the vital ratio between your cortisol and your DHEA.
Let's define those roles because it's a tug of war. Cortisol represents catabolism, right?
Which is the literal breaking down of tissues, the biological wear and tear.
Precisely. While DHEA represents an anabolism, that is your body's repair mechanism.
This is the rebuilding phase.
Yeah, and crucially, it's your neuroprotection. It protects your brain. So if your ratio of cortisol to DHEA is chronically high, your body is tearing itself down much, much faster than it can rebuild.
Which is a huge red flag.
Huge. It indicates a severe inflammatory vulnerability, and it points directly to a progressive risk of cognitive decline.
And that biological tug-of-war also shows up in your heart rate, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The framework highlights heart rate variability, or HRV.
Yes. HRV is seen as the most robust physiological marker of your autonomic resilience.
Because we hear a lot about HRV in fitness circles,
Yeah.
tracking your recovery after a workout.
Right. But in a leadership context, HRV is really about composure. It measures the microscopic variations in time between your heartbeats.
So it's the real-time tug-of-war between your sympathetic nervous system, which is your gas pedal, the fight or flight response.
And your parasympathetic nervous
Which
system.
is the brake pedal, rest and digest.
Exactly. So if you have a high HRV, specifically an RMSSD over 50 milliseconds.
It means your heart can instantly switch gears.
Yeah,
Like a
right.
good Sam Froy, right? Good composure.
Yeah. If a crisis hits, you react, but you recover efficiently. You don't get stuck in panic mode.
But if you have a low chronic HRV, say under 20 milliseconds, your gear is just stuck.
You are in a state of autonomic fatigue. And practically speaking, in a boardroom, that translates to extreme emotional dysregulation and incredibly rigid decision-making.
Because you literally lose the biological ability to see alternative solutions. You're just locked in.
Right. But we actually need to address a major misconception here regarding the cortisol tracking.
Oh, right. Because you might assume that if high cortisol is bad, then a completely collapsed, flatlined cortisol level across the entire day would be the goal.
People constantly think that. They think, great, I have no stress hormones. I must be completely zen.
Wait, hold on. Isn't that what we want? Like a perfectly low-stress state?
Absolutely not.
Really?
No, we want a regulated stress response. An overall collapse in cortisol isn't a sign of relaxation at all. Clinically, it is a massive blaring siren.
Warning of what?
It's a level 3 evidence-based medicine marker warning of relative exhaustion of the HHS axis. It means your system is completely burned out.
Oh, wow. So the furnace in that blizzard analogy we talked about earlier?
It didn't turn off because the room got warm. It turned off because it entirely ran out of gas.
That is terrifying. It's a marker that signals you have just hit a biological wall.
Wow.
Okay, so surviving the stress biologically is one thing. But a CEO actively has to make complex choices all day long. They can't just survive, they have to lead. So how does this biological engine breaking down actually warp a leader's mind?
Well, neuroscientists actually map this out using a mathematical equation for human motivation.
I love this part, the neurocomputational equation of a decision.
It's brilliant in its simplicity. The decision to act equals the expected value of the outcome minus the perceived cost of effort to get there.
Expected value minus perceived cost of effort. So where do the hormones we just talked about fit into this math?
This is where it gets incredibly practical. Dopamine, the neurotransmitter we usually associate with reward, actually multiplies your perception of the gain.
Okay, so it drives anticipation and makes the prize look bigger and much more attainable.
Right. It's tracked via the urinary metabolite HVA, by the way. But
Right.
then you have cortisol, which increases the perception of the effort's cost.
So it makes the mountain look way steeper.
Exactly. So if dopamine makes the reward look massive and cortisol makes the effort look exhausting, the ratio between those two chemicals in your brain dictates exactly how you are going to lead.
That makes so much sense. So let's break down the clinical profiles from Conexa formation. Imagine a leader with high cortisol and low dopamine.
That is pure survival mode. You are in pre-burnout.
Because the effort seems impossibly high thanks to the cortisol, and the reward seems practically non-existent because your dopamine is depleted.
Right. And when you're in this state, you completely lose your creativity. You stop playing to win and you just play not to lose.
Wow. Okay, then you have a profile with normal cortisol, but low dopamine.
This one is tricky. This is masked exhaustion.
So the person might seem perfectly calm and collected on paper.
But internally, they have zero drive. They're just going through the motions, like an engine running on empty.
And finally, low cortisol and low dopamine.
Total motivational collapse. It's a severe medical dysfunction requiring urgent intervention.
But, okay, here is the profile that absolutely fascinates me. High cortisol combined with high dopamine.
Ah, yes. The framework calls this productive overheating.
Productive overheating. It sounds exactly like every wildly successful Silicon Valley startup founder I know. They're operating on the absolute bleeding edge, fueled by an insane amount of stress, but also this massive world-changing motivation.
It is the holy grail of modern corporate culture. But I have to warn you, it is a massive trap.
Why? They seem to be getting everything done.
And the clinical data acknowledges why that happens. Your high dopamine is quite literally masking the biological wear and tear of the cortisol. You feel invincible.
So you don't even feel the damage happening.
Exactly. But the science warns that this state relies on an inverted U-curve. You need a little stress for optimal performance, right? But too much suddenly tips you over.
So that high cortisol, high dopamine state is completely unsustainable.
It carries a terrifying risk of brutal, sudden, and total exhaustion.
Which brings up a really terrifying scenario, because a highly motivated leader in that productive overheating phase is actively tricking their own brain into thinking they are totally fine.
Right, they won't admit they're tired because the dopamine is hiding the fatigue.
So if they feel fine, how do we spot the cliff before they fall off it?
We have to bypass their conscious brain entirely.
Okay.
This is where the integration from connective formation and elite sports science comes into play. We take mathematical modeling originally developed for elite runners.
Oh, like the models designed by researchers like Pessalino and Eftalion.
Exactly. Models that were designed to optimize energy and identify the exact critical speed before a runner physically collapses. But now we apply it to leadership to find a CEO's sustainable decisional speed.
Because the body always fails before the conscious mind even perceives the fatigue.
Yes. You might feel perfectly sharp sitting in a board meeting, arguing your points, but your physical body is secretly giving away your central fatigue.
And clinicians use some really incredible biomarkers for this early warning system. First, there's stabilometry.
Right. They put you on a specialized platform and measure postural micro-oscillations.
Which are these tiny involuntary shifts in your balance. You can't even feel them happening, but the machine can detect them.
It's like testing the structural integrity of a bridge. You're looking for that microscopic wobble in the concrete long before the bridge actually cracks.
I love that analogy. They also look at kinematics, right?
Yes. Kinematics involves tracking co-contractions, physical rigidity, and a loss of fluid gestures.
So you just get stiff.
Exactly. When your HHS axis starts to unbalance, one of the very first clinical signs is that your movements become slightly stiffer. And then there is prosody.
Prosody. That's the rhythm, tone, and melody of your speech, right?
Yes. So a monotone voice or a subtle slowness in movement, which is called bright kinesia, isn't just a quirk.
It acts as an indirect physical indicator that your dopamine levels are crashing.
This is exactly why movement analysis is considered such a powerful transitional level 2 medical tool. You cannot outsmart a stabilometry board. You cannot fake your kinematics.
It entirely bypasses the ego of the leader.
Right. But alongside these physical movement markers, they also run rigorous executive function tests. They want to see how your cognitive architecture is actually holding up under the hood.
And rather than just listing these tests, let's actually play one out because I think it's so illustrative. One of the core evaluations they use is the Stroop test, which measures your ability to inhibit impulsivity.
Let's try a mini version right now.
Okay, let's do it.
Imagine I flash a word on a screen in front of you. The word itself is spelled out as B-L-U-E, B-L-U-E. But the ink used to print the word is red.
Okay, got it.
Your job is to say the color of the ink, not read the word.
So I have to look at the word B-L-U-E, fight the very natural urge to read it, and say red.
Exactly. It requires massive cognitive inhibition. When your brain is fresh, you can override that impulse easily. But when you are suffering from hidden central fatigue, your brain becomes rigid.
So I just blurt out blue.
Yes. You literally lose the neurological brakes required to stop yourself from reading the word.
Wow. And they combine that with things like the NBAC test, right? Which measures how your working memory functions when you are just drowning in informational overload.
And the Wisconsin card sorting test. That one measures cognitive flexibility. Like, can you actually change your strategy mid-game when the rules suddenly change?
Which happens in business all the time.
Constantly. And there's also the Iowa gambling task, which looks at how your brain makes decisions under severe risk and how you adjust to your own errors.
So if your body's micro movements are wobbling and your brain is failing these cognitive flexibility tests, your system is basically begging for repair.
Yes. But the crucial shift in this framework is understanding that repair is not passive.
You can't just lie on a couch and expect to recover.
No, biological repair is a highly active, required process.
And that leads us to active maintenance. Specifically, the framework looks at sleep architecture and blood sugar.
Because sleep is not just turning off the machine, it is active brain maintenance. And they measure it intensely using 14-day actigraphy tracking.
So they don't just care how long you sleep, they care about the specific stages you hit.
Let's talk about N3 deep sleep. This is when your brain activates the glymphatic system.
Lymphatic system.
Yeah, think of it like the night janitorial staff in a massive high-rise office building. During the day, the brain generates all sorts of metabolic waste products, specifically these beta amyloid proteins.
Right.
So during deep sleep, the brain actually shrinks slightly, allowing cerebrospinal fluid to rush in and literally wash all that trash away.
So if you aren't getting that N3 deep sleep, you are essentially locking the janitors out of the building.
Exactly.
The next day, you are trying to make million-dollar decisions in an office literally overflowing with biochemical trash.
And the clinical consequence of that is severe decisional brain fog and a massive drop in neuroplasticity. You just can't think clearly.
And then there is REM sleep, rapid eye movement.
Right. And this stage isn't for physical cleanup. It's for emotional consolidation and strategic simulation.
Your brain is running through the stresses of the day and emotionally detaching from them.
Yeah. So if you skip your REM sleep, you wake up with extreme emotional fragility and a complete loss of creativity.
Speaking of things that cause rigidity and fragility, the framework also mandates continuous glucose monitoring, or CGM, usage.
Yes, and this is for non-diabetic executives, which surprises a lot of people, using devices like the Freestyle Libre or Dexcom.
We really need to talk about the profound connection between your glycemic variability and your decisional stability.
Well, we all know the feeling of a sugar rush, but biologically, a hyperglycemic spike actually drives impulsivity and immediate reward-seeking behavior in the brain.
You become reckless.
You do, but the crash is even more dangerous.
This is so relatable. I'm fascinated by this. So if you've ever had that 3 p.m. sugar crash and suddenly felt incredibly annoyed by a perfectly normal email from a coworker, an email you would normally just brush off, that's not just you being a little cranky.
Not at all. That is your brain chemically locking you into cognitive rigidity. It is a physiological certainty. Hypoglycemic crashes directly cause cognitive rigidity, irritability, and phenomenally poor judgment.
Think about how this scales at the executive level.
It's massive.
A single poor corporate decision made during a 3 p.m. sugar crash or after a week of missing REM sleep isn't just an oops moment. It could have massive cascading financial and human consequences for thousands of employees.
Which is exactly why we measure it.
So how do top-tier medical facilities actually pull all of these wildly different data points together? I mean, we've got the cortisol, the dopamine, the micromovements, the sleep architecture, the blood sugar. How do they treat a leader today with all this?
The framework points to an integrated model which results in a score of decisional resilience.
A score of decisional resilience.
Yeah. It aggregates 6 critical dimensions to move from a static snapshot to a predictive trajectory.
Okay, what are the 6?
It combines your biological load, which is your wear and tear, your motivational capital, essentially your dopamine reserves, your autonomic reserve, which is your heart rate flexibility under stress, your recovery via sleep architecture, your motor efficiency, catching that early central fatigue, and finally, your cognitive performance.
And the goal of applying artificial intelligence to all this aggregated data is just staggering.
It really is.
The aim is to sit a leader down and say, given your unique biological profile, your decisional capacity will degrade by 30% in exactly 3 weeks.
And this isn't just theory. Global reference structures are building this capability right now.
Like the Hôpital Americain in Paris, the Mayo Clinic in the U.S., Clinique La Prairie in Switzerland, and Fountain Life.
It's happening globally, but it is important to clarify one highly technical boundary the framework establishes regarding some of the blood markers being tested.
Oh, right. It mentions advanced markers like NFL and GFA.
Yes. The neurowear markers. Some sensationalized reports call these neurotroponins, but that is biologically inaccurate.
Because troponins are specific markers used to detect heart muscle damage during a heart attack, right?
Exactly. NFL, which stands for neurofilament light chain, and GFAP are markers for actual neuronal lesions in the brain.
Finding them in the blood means brain cells are literally being damaged.
Yes. And using these to track stress in healthy leaders is strictly the absolute frontier of cutting-edge longevity medicine. It's not yet a routine diagnostic tool. We have to be clear about that.
That makes sense. So if we take a step back and look at the big picture of everything we've talked about, this entirely reframes how we evaluate human potential and leadership.
It really does.
Because the question we should be asking is no longer, is this leader performing well today? The real question is, how long can they sustain this specific level of performance without fundamentally altering their capacity to make good decisions?
And that is the ultimate synthesis of this Connexa and DeLong framework. The formula for decisional longevity is your allostatic load, plus your dopaminergic capital, plus your autonomic reserve.
Math transforms raw biology into accurate prediction.
And above all, recovery active, calculated recovery is the ultimate determinant of how long a leader can actually lead before they break.
We've covered incredible ground today. We started by looking at how stress hormones like cortisol and motivation chemicals like dopamine alter the actual mathematical equation of how you make choices.
Then we looked at how tracking your micro movements, the melody of your voice, and your afternoon blood sugar spikes can serve as an objective early warning system for central fatigue.
And ultimately, we saw how all this data feeds into predictive AI models of burnout.
It replaces the old static medical checklist with a dynamic, highly predictive dashboard of human performance.
Which leaves you with a final thought to ponder. We started by comparing this to plugging into a car's internal diagnostic computer to measure engine wear. If the science is moving toward an AI model that can accurately predict a 30% drop in a CEO's decision capacity weeks in advance.
That's a heavy thought.
It is. If we possess the mathematical and biological ability to predict the exact date a leader's judgment will inevitably fail due to physical wear and tear, should corporate boards or even the voting public have access to this decisional dashboard before putting someone in charge of a massive company or a country? Think about it. Until next time, keep digging deeper.